Hello and welcome to this video where I teach you the basics of Make. Make is an incredible no-code tool that will allow you to automate your workflows. I believe that automation is one of the most undervalued and underutilized productivity hacks out there, but it can be quite intimidating to get started. And it doesn't help that Make as a tool can look a bit complicated at first, but don't worry, that's exactly what this video is for. So whether you have any experience with similar tools like Zapier or whether you've never built an automation, after this video, you'll have everything you need to know to get started with Make. Obviously, first things you need is an account. So if you don't have a Make account yet, you can create your free account with the link that I have left for you in the description. There you'll also find some time stamps to jump to a different section if you don't want to watch the whole video. And yeah, for the best results, I would recommend that you open Make and Notion and try to build along as I do. You can pause and rewatch if you need it. We always learn best by doing. And yeah, let's dive into this workshop.
Great. Let's get started. Okay, so this is the page we need. Let's get started with Make. In case you can't see anything here, then please someone unmute yourself and let me know that nothing works. But I just assume that you can see my screen. And we're going to now build together a super quick first. Some more people come in. Submit them quickly. We're going to build together a very simple first automation in Make. It's going to be like a scheduling bot for Twitter. And that's going to walk us through all the basic concepts that we need to understand to work with Make and make the most of it. In case you don't have a Make account yet, I'll drop in actually a quick link, a quick page in Notion with all the links that you might want to use. So you can get everything up and running. Let's quickly head back here and into the chat. Yes. So am I on mute? No, I don't think I'm on mute. I think that might be an issue with your setup otherwise. Awesome. So here's a quick page with a few useful links. There's like my affiliate link for Make in case you don't have an account yet, and like a few resources for later. Also link to the YouTube channel where the replay will be. And yes, okay. With that, let's now jump in. Perfect. Great. So this is what you'll see if you sign into Make for the first time. The awesome thing about Make or Integromat as it was before is that already on the free plan you'll get a bunch of things. One of the few things that makes Make so awesome is that with the free plan you can already do multi-step automations, for example. With all the other offers like Zapier Automate, you only were able to do that on the paid plan, so that's already a little bonus. And let's just get started with our first scenario. That's how an automation is called in Make. And we can just start it here from the main screen or like go on scenarios and do the same there. And when you first create like a new scenario, you get this big button in the middle, and you already see like the one major difference between Make and most of the other automation tools, and that is this visual interface. Right? If you compare it to like Zapier or like Automate, you have this very limited system where you can only see the things in front of you. So you have like this linear way of visualizing the automation, and that just makes it very hard to build something complex. And with this, we're going to see that it's much easier, in particular if you then want to take things a step further and build in paving logic or something like that. You can obviously like name your scenario on the top to like a new whatever you wanted, and then let's take a quick look at the UI elements. So in the middle, you can start adding the first step to your automation. But before we do it, in the bottom, we see like this run once button. This is actually super useful, in particular when you build your automation. This will just trigger the whole automation as far as you've built it so far. You can do this during the building to test the automation. But also, if you were to build an automation that you only need occasionally, say, for example, you build an automation to export people from an Excel or Google Sheets spreadsheet into your email provider, and you don't need to run that on a regular basis. You just need to run it like every few months or so. Then you can build that automation and just not schedule it and always activate it with this. Otherwise, if it's scheduled, you'll see here, you can turn it on and off and set a frequency. We'll get to that in a second. Saving, very obvious. You need to do that before you exit automation, but Make will also remind you to do this. The other ones we don't really need. Autoline is also something that, like, for the visual part, if you have everything a bit set up, a bit confusing, and you need to go back to make it look pretty, this is quite useful. But the more important thing will be these three buttons that open up a few advanced tools. But for now, this is enough about that UI part. Let's get started. And I assume that everyone on this call knows the very basics about automations. If not, I have also, like, on the Notion page, like a quick link to like a getting started guide. It's geared towards students, but everyone can learn something from it. And then if you know a bit about automations, you know that we always need to have a trigger, something that starts off the whole automation. And that's exactly what we're going to set with the first click. If we click on the plus button, you'll see a bunch of apps. It's all the apps actually open that you can integrate with Make. So we definitely want to use the search function to search for our tool. And in this case, we want to look for Notion because we are going to build a scheduling tool that will allow us to write a tweet in a Notion database and then post that to Twitter. Actually, before we add the module here, let's quickly go to our Notion page. So I've already set up like a super simple database. We have like a tweet, and we have like a formula next to it that will tell us how many signs we have. And yeah, we can just type a sample tweet. So this is a sample tweet during my Make demo. Perfect. Now we have some information that we can work with. And yeah. If you have already Make in your workspace and used it before, then you can just give access to Make up top by clicking here on the share button as usual and picking, oops, still called Integromat for me, but if you did it with the new one, it will be Make. Otherwise, if you've never used Notion and Make together, then you have to authorize it first. We can also quickly show how that works. So if you pick Notion as the first app, you'll see a bunch of options, and these are all the available triggers and things that you can do for this first step. So we actually want to watch a database. That's the usual one where, like, whenever something gets updated, it starts automation. It's probably most of the time what you want to use to start something in Notion. And once you did this, you already see like that the first context menu is a bit more complex than what you're used to maybe from Automate. But it's actually fairly simple. As you can see up top, we need to pick the connection. And as I said, if you've never worked with Make or Integromat before, then you won't have anything here. So you need to click on the add button, pick a connection type. I recommend to pick the public one. Public and internal is simply the difference for like the login. Like if you remember the very first days of the Notion API, you had to like go onto the Notion page and create your API key to give access to like Zapier and stuff like that. If you want to go with that process, you would pick the internal step. Otherwise, for like the far smoother sign-on option, you pick public, and that will open this usual authorization view where you can pick the Notion workspace that you want to sign into, as well as like give access to the specific pages that you need. And always, as always, you don't have to actually select any pages here. Once you've given Make access in general to your workspace, you can always do that on the page level, just as I did before. So this obviously failed, but we have the connection here. Next, we need to tell Notion, okay, how should we look at database items? And we have two options here. We can either say by created time and by updated time. Created time means that like it will, every time the scenario runs, it will take a look at all the database entries that have been created since the last time the automation runs. So in this case, because the automation has never run before, it will like get all the entries. We only have one. But if I then would try to do it again for a second test run, it wouldn't find any entry unless I create a new one. So for testing your automations, it's usually a good idea to actually set it to update the time regardless of what you need later. Because that way you can simply go into Notion and for like all the testing purposes, you can just like create a quick updated checkbox. So whenever you do a new run through your automation and want to see whether it still works, you just click this to change the last updated time. Okay, next up, database ID. That's a bit buggy sometimes in Make. Like usually it should give you actually a drop-down menu of all your databases that you've shared with Make, but recently it hasn't been working. So you actually need to find your database ID. Luckily, that's fairly simple. All you need to do is you need to go into Notion. You need to open your page, open your database as a page, and then you can copy the link. You can do that by either clicking on Share and the copy link, or just press Command L or Control L, and that will give you, in general, the link to your database. And then the database ID is this number here between your workspace name and the question mark. It's a bit confusing at first, but once you know it, it's fairly easy to get the database ID. Simply go here and check the URL between after the slash from your workspace name and the question mark. That's your database ID. And we're going to copy that and we're going to paste it in here. And that's about it. The last thing now is limit, and this refers to how many entries does Make use per run. So in our case, a limit of 2 would mean that like after it looked up 2 entries in our Notion database, it just stops. So you want to make sure that this number is high enough for whatever automation you build, that it covers all possible entries in a run through. So for example, if you say you schedule 50 tweets per week and you run this automation once per week and you want to make sure that all these tweets are scheduled, then you obviously need to set that limit at least to 50, preferably higher. There's not really a reason to like not set it to some ridiculously high number, except to kind of safeguard in case you mess up with your automation. Because that's maybe a good moment to quickly talk about the way your limits work in Make. Make gives you a number of operations, and every step in your automation is one operation. So in our case, we only have like one module so far in our automation, this one, and every time this here runs, it costs one operation. So the one risk that you run with a very high limit is that like if you set this to 10,000 and it actually finds 10,000 entries, then you might end up using up all your operations, but it's highly unlikely. Anyway, okay, so we set this one up, updated time, the correct database, we can just click on OK, and then it's set. And now one of the things that trips up beginners with Make is that you should definitely at this point right-click this module and say run this module only, or run the whole automation once, because only that will make it much easier to build the rest automation, and we'll see why in a moment. So I just click here and say run once, and we wait a second, then we get here the results and can see whether it actually pulled in data, and we can see, yes, it pulled in one bundle, so one entry in our Notion database. We see all the information, and we can click on property values, and here we can see, okay, these are the 2 properties of our database, right? So it pulled in everything correctly. Text, this is a sample tweet, and we have like tweet numbers, tweet characters remaining. So the first step is ready, and now we want to schedule that for Twitter. And you have 2 options. You can either now add another module and just add the Twitter module. Oops, I don't know why it doesn't find it right now, but it usually supports Twitter. Yep, but as you can see, it requires a premium account. So if you're on the free plan, you can't use that one. It's only a very few apps that are behind that paywall. Most of them are free. But luckily, we have a workaround. We can use something called Buffer. Buffer is a free scheduling, or like a scheduling tool, like Hype Fury or Tweet Hunter, but it has a free tier. So you can just sign up and create an account, and that will allow you to schedule a tweet for free. Once we click on it, again, we see it loads a bunch of actions, and these are now much less than with Notion. We basically can create a status update that will, I think, tweet automatically. No, it always adds it, I think, to the queue. We can delete one or we can update one. So we pick like the create a status update. And now, again, we are greeted with all the setup information. Again, we have the connection up top. So if I don't have my Buffer account connected yet, I would click here on add and could do that. I can then check my profiles to which I want to post. So in this case, we have only one Twitter profile. And now we can define a few parameters. The text is obviously the text of whatever gets posted. So I will go in here, and that will open something that if you only work so far with Zapier or Automate, it might look a bit confusing at first, but don't worry. These are now all the information that have so far been pulled into your automation and can now be used here. And if you actually hover over it, you'll see that like this icon starts like pulsating. That's very helpful if you have like very long automations. This will actually show you like where does that information get pulled in, right? Because we could actually have like a second action in between where we look up some other Notion database, and this just makes sure that we know, okay, this is actually information from this step that gets pulled in. And in small gray next to the type of information, you see the sample text. And this sample text is only there because we ran this module once. If we wouldn't have taken that step, everything here would be empty, and we would have to kind of guess how the data is actually registered here. So that's why it's so important to like after every step, you should run your automation once just to get the sample data here and make it a bit easier for you. So we want to look for the text of our tweet. So we actually need to find our properties. They are here. Those are the properties from the. Are they correct? 1 second. Let's see where we find it. No, this is not the one that we are looking for. Here, property values, tweet. We could obviously put in the type, but like we don't want to tweet text. We want to tweet the actual plain text. So this is sample tweet, and now we have it here. We could now actually get a step further and add even more data here. So if we want to say, okay, we want to add that text, and we also want to, for whatever reason, want to add the time at which we originally created that tweet, we could press space and then like add also like the last edited time or the created time, and now it would treat both things. And just the same as we can put in dynamic data here, we could put in static data here. So if I just write now here, written or like posted via Buffer, then every single time this automation runs, it will pull in the text and then annotate posted via Buffer. So you can play around with that. And you have a bunch of other options to fill more data, but none of this is very relevant for this like basic example. So we'll skip that for now, but we will maybe come back to that later. Now, actually, we can pick here. This is like a specific parameter for Buffer, so we can decide whether we want to post immediately or later. So if you know Buffer, you can define like a queue of tweets, like when to tweet and everything. So if you want to say, okay, or just add this to the queue and post it later, you can do that. But in this case, let's actually do post immediately so that we see whether it works. And we don't want to attach any media for now. So we just click OK. And that's about it. I could now actually click on run once and see what happens. And actually, let's just do this because it should actually do nothing. Yeah, as you can see, only this step happened. Nothing happened here. Why is that? Because we actually didn't get any data in. Because remember, we said here, watch database items by updated time. And since the last time that we ran this automation, nothing was updated in our database. So we first need to go back into Notion and go here and click that, like make any change to this or create like a second tweet in it so that we have a updated entry. And now if we click on run once, it should pull it in. Yes, and as we can see, now it took it to Buffer. We can again click on here to see what happened. We got an input, this is the correct input with the text, and we got an output like a new status. And if we now go on my Twitter, we should actually see that it hopefully posted that to check that everything worked properly. So let's go to profile, tweets, and yeah, as you can see, that tweet is now there. So that very simple first automation in Make worked properly. And yeah, before we go to the next step, let's actually take a quick pause. Is there anything? Are there any questions at this point, or should we just continue? Oh, I seem to have some in the chats. Yes, I believe the database IDs are persistent, so it shouldn't break your automation if you do that. Yeah, Ben also answered that already. Perfect. Yeah, if Make doesn't have the auto scheduler you use, I mean, you have two options. Either you then use the ones that Make provides, or you look for a different sort of workaround. One potential workaround that I'll talk about later is that you kind of hack Make and Zapier together to bridge the few spots where Make still has gaps. But yeah, otherwise, that's the one big drawback of Make for sure, the numbers of possibilities. Add hashtags, yes. If you that depends always on the hashtag. That will not depend on Make, but on the scheduling tool that you use, right? Make simply passes on exactly the string, so exactly like the text that you put into the scheduling tool, and then you need to rely on the scheduling tool to recognize it. Buffer, for example, will render that properly, same as for like if you mention someone with an ad. Also, Buffer will recognize that, but that's why I would always recommend that you test these things once. My name is Kanika Chaudhary because I'm not on my own Teams account, but yeah, that's why I'm under my second name, so to say. Perfect. Awesome. So if there are no other questions at this point, then let's go back in and make this a little bit more complex, shall we? So, oops, that is good timing. I'm sorry for that. I don't know whether there's a better way to do this in Teams than just like switching the windows, but I think for now we may need to deal with it. Okay, so we built a super simple scheduling tool in Twitter and Make, but obviously, one last thing. Now what we would do is we would ask Make to regularly check whether there are any tweets to post, right? Because we don't want to go in here and click on run whenever we want to schedule a tweet, and we could just like put the tweet directly into Twitter, right? So what we can do is we click on that time icon here, and that allows you to schedule our scenario. We have a bunch of options, and again, there you can see that it's like much more powerful than the other tools. We can do regular intervals, once every day, day of the month, days of the month, or specified dates. Regular intervals, for example, now we can pick like every 10 minutes, or for like a Twitter thing, probably makes sense to say, okay, every day at like 8 o'clock, or like I will write all my tweets until 10, and then by 10 o'clock, I wanted to schedule that. So now I would just press on, and now whenever it is 10 o'clock, this will go through these tweets and see which ones are updated, and then schedule them. Should turn it off in case we so that we don't clutter up our Twitter timeline. What we now probably want to do though is we want to be able to write tweets in Notion, and then maybe make some changes and some edits to it, right? And only when we are ready to post it do we want to actually have it scheduled. So let's add like a new property here, and let's call this status to make it a bit more complex. You could also do that obviously just with a checkbox, but that would be boring. So we do a status, and we have like maybe a draft, and we have like ready to post. Awesome. So now let's create a second tweet, and the second tweet could be we are building a Twitter scheduler tool directly in Notion, and now we can check. We can say actually to see how that works, we do Notion HQ and make, I believe it's make HQ. And let's say this is now a draft and we don't want to post that draft. So what we should do is we go back into our scenario and we click again, we right click on our first tool and say run this module only, because if we run the whole thing, it will just post it, right? So we only want to run this one, and we want to see, okay, how does data look now that it pulls in now that we have that status? And as you can see, first we have now two bundles because I updated both of them. And this is the one that we are looking at. This is the second one. And as you can see, we have now this new status one. And the type of data that is pulled in is that we actually have a color. So if you change the color, you could actually also filter by color. We have an ID. And the most important thing, we have the name of the status. So what we can do now is we can set a filter. And filters are super easy. We just click in between a connection. And that allows us to set up a filter. We can name that filter. We can say, okay, ready to post, ? And now we can set a condition. Conditions are fairly straightforward. If you know how they work, you can pick any sort of dynamic data, again, from every previous step. In this case, we only have one previous step. And now we look for our status. Here it is, the name of the status. And we only want to post if the name of the status equals, and now we need to go back into Notion and make sure that we type it exactly as we have it here. So also with like, it's case sensitive, so we need to do ready to post equals ready to post. And obviously we can do a whole bunch of rules. We can add and or all rules, so these function just the same way as like filters in Notion databases functions. And we have like a bunch of operators that we can pick from to make sure that we get exactly what we want. As you can see, we have like also not case sensitive or case sensitive. I think equal to is case sensitive, but let's click OK. This should be enough. And now we actually need to quickly just hit our updated button, because otherwise it won't get through. And let's flip that, because this is now our draft and this is our ready to post. And let's go back here and say, okay, run this once. And as you can see, it will now show us here, that one bundle didn't pass through because it didn't equal ready to post, and one bundle passed through that was ready to post. So we had here two things came in, bundle 1, bundle 2, but we only had one tweet posted here. And again, we can check on Twitter that everything worked as intended. Awesome. And as you can see, because Buffer supports that rich data output, we actually have the correct hashtags here, so or like mentions. Great. But let's not stop here, because actually we don't just have like two statuses, right? We probably would have also probably also have a status called posted, and we would like our automation to automatically update that, right? So we can do that. In Automate or Zapier, you couldn't do this on the free plan because this would now require a third step. But here we can do that already on the free plan. We can just say, okay, let's add another Notion step. And now let's look at the actions that we have here. We can still do also like, as you can see, we can do triggers, further like triggers or like lookups within the automation, which is already quite powerful. And we can now say, okay, please update a database item. Awesome. First, we need to again tell it, okay, which database item should be updated. And I think we should have still have the same one. Yeah, awesome. Get that one, and we wait for a second for it to load, which options we get. Let's see. Usually it's actually quite fast. Perfect. And now, as you can see, we can start mapping information to that database. The first thing, though, we need to do is we need to tell it, okay, which database ID item should actually be updated. And we want to update the one that got posted, right? So the one that got found here should be updated. So we go in here and we can now go, and now you can see, because it's the third in the line, we actually have two apps to pick from. We have the, and if I move this, okay, can't seem to move this, but if I were able to move this, you would see that with, if I hover over this, the buffer one would pulsate, and now the first one is blinking. So I want to pick the database item ID from the first round, and now tell it, okay, don't update the tweet, don't do anything. Oops, sorry for that. We don't want to do anything to the tweet. We don't want to change the updated field, but we want to change the status. We have two options, actually. We can toggle on this map. Map always allows us to map data. So if you would want to say, okay, please change the status to something that happened prior, that some sort of data that we pulled in from before. So if for whatever reason you wanted to change the status to let's say the created time, you could do that here. But we don't want to map it. We want to actually have it always change to the same thing. We always want to have it change to posted. 1 second, let's quickly let in Daniel again. Okay, so status is now posted. And that's actually, oh, okay, let's tweet a third time. We're just going to spam Twitter for now. So working great. And we want this is like ready to post. And we go back to the automation and we run it once. And now if we go back to our database, the status changed to posted. And if we check Twitter again, we'll have a third tweet here. So this is how you use filters and how you can reference, add additional steps and reference like prior database items that you used before. So again, let's quickly go back here and see whether there are any new questions. Yes, this I think is the last one, right? Yeah, that depends on like what you tell it, right? Like, so you either do it by date created or like date updated, and make will run through all the items that like fulfill that condition. So if you accidentally like update like a bunch of rows, then it would post them again unless you've set up a filter, right, that you only want to post the ones that are ready to be posted. One guardrail against that is to say, okay, only look at like new things that were newly created. But then in our specific case, you would run into issues if you want to take any like edit tweets, right? Because you would like create a database item, you would write your draft, then make would run the automation and see, okay, it is in there, but it's like a draft, so I won't post it. And then later you do the final edits and switch it to post, ready to be posted, and make wouldn't grab it because you said only like newly created items. So this is where you need to think about a bit about your setup. But then again, I think answered this. So awesome. Thank you, Ben. Awesome. Yeah, like an update checkbox for would be also possible, but depending on what you want to do. Wouldn't that be wasting one action for the tweet that wasn't posted? I'm not sure I understand that question. Like it will trigger like it will, like these if we look at the automation, it doesn't it will grab all the updated ones. So if you updated 100 posts, like the first thing would actually cost you 100 operations, but they wouldn't pass on through it, right? So like on the second step, like only what passed through the filter will trigger the next one. So if like on the first step you have 100, on the second step you have 1, then the whole thing is 101 operations, not 200. Every time one of the modules is triggered for one bundle of information, that's an action. But that's also why you see like with make like such a higher numbers than, right, if you compare it, right, like Zapier gives you like 200 zaps, and like I think on the free plan here you get already 1,000 operations. So depending on how you structure your things, you actually can go very, very far with that. For example, like the third step that we just added, right, like that changing the thing to post it, that's kind of a luxury step. If you like need to be careful with that, you would not do that. Awesome. Then let me just like show you one last thing before we open everything up for like last Q&A or like some more advanced things if anyone is interested, and that is paths. If you are not convinced yet that Make is absolutely amazing and much better than Zapier, then this one for sure will do it. Because if you've ever tried to create paving logic, so say, okay, if condition A is met, then please do this. If condition B is met, please do this. You'll go insane very, very quickly, in particular if you try to nest several of these if statements or like paths together. But here it's super, super simple. So let's upgrade our small tweet scheduler here, and let's actually add like an image. So sometimes we might want to post a tweet with an image. And Buffer, if you recall, allows you to do that. But we need to pick, should we attach a media to the update or not? And I'm actually not sure what happens if you say yes and then you don't have an image. It probably still works. But for the sake of this, let's just assume we need to make sure that only that it always is correct, the setting. So what we would need to do is we would need, before we go to Buffer, we would need to change or like see and check, okay, is there an image or not? So let's unlink this, and we do this by right-click unlink, that like disconnects them, and adding something that's called a router. And a router in Make or Automate is in Integromat, sorry. A router is basically path control. So you get it by clicking on Tool, and then pick the router. And now you get this green thingy, and it all automatically snaps into place. So let's actually rearrange this a bit. So far, like nothing, not much happens. But if you click on the +1, like actually, let's connect this one. So we have like one connection. And if we click on the +1, we see now we get a second one. So this is where the magic comes in. We can now tell Make when it should take this path and when it should take this path. So actually, this one still has the filter, so this is actually wrong. So we'll just remove this. We instead will call this image, and we call this one. Actually, this is no image because we've already set up. So this is no image, and this is image. So let's again go into Notion. And we've added, no, we didn't add another one. So let's just like, we can even post images. And let's just take a screenshot of this one quickly, save it, add it to Notion. Awesome. Wait for it to, oops, was that too quick? No, there it is. And again, just as always, we run the first module, in particular if we get like new data, so just that we know how the data is structured, and we look at it and we see now in the property values, we have also an image, and we get like a bunch of text, plain text. That's tweet, sorry, that's the image here, one. And we have like a file name and like a file URL. Awesome. So now what we can do is we can go into one of these paths, doesn't matter which one, and we can say, okay, only go to the image path if, and now we go and look for, oops, sorry, now we go and look for the image, where is it? Oops, I think this one is actually not updated for whatever reason, so let's quickly delete that module. Sometimes you need to, like, if you change the data in the beginning and you need to like redo the modules, which is a bit annoying, but now it should work. Let's see, condition, image, yet now we have it. So we go into image and we say, okay, image, oops, sorry for that. And we will say image exists. So if there's no image, then it should take this path, otherwise this one. And we actually don't need to set up this condition. We can just say this is the fallback route. So this is super useful if you would, otherwise we would need to say like, okay, like image exists, right? But we can just tell it like either one of the things is true or please take the other way. So delete this and double check this. So we say property value image exists. Awesome. And then we add like another buffer tool and create a status update and say, okay, this Twitter profile, yep, we all know that already. We want to get this text. and we want to say, yes, we have a media attached to it. And the media will be, now I don't remember whether it's link or link to an image. I think there was a difference. So this is something where you just need to test out which one works. And now we actually don't have the image here. We had the information here, right? So here we got like from the image, oops. A file one. So let's see whether this works or whether we need to postpone this. But in theory, you would click on the image one and get that, and then it would continue downwards, and then we could add the same step here. So let's just actually run this once, but we don't post it immediately because now we're not sure whether it actually works. So we just say add it to the top of the queue in buffer. Let's run this. Oops, something is unsaved. Yeah, you always need to click OK down here, otherwise it will give you this unsaved error. Still has something unsaved. Where is it unsaved? Here we also didn't click OK. And then let's run this. And now it didn't do anything because we didn't have any updated object. So let's update this. And let's actually update this as well. And as you can see, we also forgot to say, okay, let's assume this is ready to post and this is ready to post. So just that we see the two paths. And now let's try it again. And this one failed. Okay, so this one is probably now failing because we have the it got some mistake for whatever reason. It doesn't pull in the image URL. Usually that works. Not quite sure why that's not the case, but it actually offers us the opportunity to teach another thing. With Make, if your whole automation will incur one error, then it will stop with the rest of the operation. So now it should have actually like processed a second piece of information, right? But it didn't because it ran into an error. And we can, like sometimes we can't make sure that there are like no errors in the data. In particular, for example, if you say you collect a bunch of emails and names of people and want to like import them to your email tool, and some people don't fill out the name. If you tell Make now that it should like populate one field with name and one field with email, it will actually return an error every time name is empty because it can't populate it. So if you're in a situation where you know like there will be errors and you just can't avoid them because the data is structured that way, you can use another tool that is called ignore, and that will mean that like even if it runs into an error, it will just continue the whole operation. So if we now go back into this and uncheck them and update them, that actually was one click too many, but either way, click it. This time it should process both of them. Ooh, actually, it processed both down here. Okay, I don't know why that happened. The one thing should not have an image, but it actually sent it down. How did that happen? Huh. That is a good. Now we can go in here. Okay, maybe that was just. Okay, so let's actually go file URL exists. Now it gives the data. Maybe it was an issue with something else. So now we can open image. Oh, I was just blind before. Now we can grab the URL. And let's go back again into Notion. As you see, like in particular with Make, you need to do quite a bit of debugging. But yeah, it's definitely worth it. Okay, so now we get run into an error. Okay. That was the question before. You see, like now buffer actually returned an error because we just posted that before. So this is another like safety guard. Like if you actually like run your automation twice in a row and buffer recognizes that you just try to post this, it will tell you, whoop, buddy, you tried this already. So oops, let's zoom out a bit here and add this one. And this is now where also auto line comes in handy, so we can make this pretty again. Although it just flipped it in the head. Either way, we ignore now both errors, update these things, and force it to run again. And let's actually also say here, don't post it immediately, just add it to the top of the queue so that we don't spam Twitter. Run it once. And now it worked properly. As you can see, we had like we got like two bundles in here, and we spit out one operation here and one operation here. The one with the image came down here. The other one came up there. And if we now look at buffer and check our queue, our two tweets should be there. Let's see whether we should be actually logged in. Yeah. So this is how buffer actually looks like, and you have your queue, and actually it doesn't have any tweets. Did it actually post them? Oh no. Okay. Did it or did it not? Let's find out. Maybe I also need to refresh buffer. So we definitely didn't. No, didn't tweet about it. So let's check in the queue. Sometimes it takes a second in buffer to refresh. Nope. Okay. Good question. I don't know why they actually did not appear here. They should have gone through, because like we didn't get an error and we scheduled them. Oh no, we got like an error handler in both cases. So something went wrong. Okay, buffer just doesn't want us to post them again. Buffer still says we can't do it, and apparently we can't ignore the buffer error with this one because it's buffer and not this one. So we would need to write a new tweet. Can actually, let's try. Does this work? Just to figure out whether our automation would work in general. If not, then I give up and try to figure it out later. Okay, doesn't look like it. Yeah, it still returns the error that it has been without thumbnail parameter. Okay, so we would need to go in here, and that is probably the one that I was talking about before, like with a link to an image. Is it linked to an image or is it this link? One last try, and if that one doesn't work as well, then we surrender. But oops, okay, that was too quick. That's another thing. The updated one always changes the minute. So if you update it in the same minute, then it won't do anything. So let's actually just duplicate this for a completely new entry. And hope that finally it worked. And yeah, as you can see, okay, so we had to put like the image link into something else for it to grab us the link, but so not sure. I think like I know you now I remember you have to put it into both the thumbnail and the other one. Otherwise, oh yeah, thank you, Ben. I don't see the chat otherwise. So yeah, but that's like in theory how it's supposed to work, including all the debugging and the errors in the end. Those are the basics of Make, like the most important things that you need to know, like how to start the automation, how to combine different modules. Filters are super important, and then the how do you call them? The routers. The routers are just like a huge game changer.
Okay, so this concludes the workshop, but actually wanted to quickly show you still how to do the thing with the image correctly in Buffer. I remembered at the very end, but yeah, then didn't show it. So here's what you need to do for Buffer to correctly process the image. You need to have the URL both as the link to an image and the thumbnail link. I don't know why you need to put both. It doesn't work if you put only one. But if you put in both, like twice the same link, then it will properly render your image and push that to Twitter. So yeah, and with that, we're definitely done with this quick walkthrough in Notion. And with that, you've made it to the end of our short workshop for Make. I hope that you have now a basic understanding of how automations work, of how you can create them in Make, and how you can start streamlining and automating your Notion workflows. If you feel ready for your next project, I recommend that you check out the other video that I linked in the description. It's another tutorial about automations in Make, formerly known as Integromat. It will teach you how you can use everything you know already and a few new tricks to add images directly from your iPhone to Notion. Super cool if you want to quickly populate some journal pages, or if you want to basically build Pinterest in Notion. So yeah, definitely give this one a look. If you want to learn in general more about the Notion API, I have a blog article for you in the description as well. And yeah, if you enjoyed this, it would help me out a lot if you could like this video. If you have any questions, please ask them in the comments. I will reply to every single one. And last but not least, if you want to learn more awesome Notion tricks, get regular free Notion templates, or are looking for many more ways to streamline your workflow, then you should definitely follow this channel. So yeah, see you in the next one.